Are you teaching about culture or are you teaching through culture? Many music educators are stuck in a cycle of surface level representation, what we call tokenism. Today, we're diving deep into practical strategies to move beyond that and truly center authentic voices in your music classroom.
Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We're so glad to be with you today.
Yeah.
Kathryn, I am so glad that you came back from the Illinois Music Conference and suggested that we talk with Erin.
Yeah. She's so easy to talk to, and she's a wealth of knowledge and just great to talk to and realize like we got to do this work. We got to get better at it. And we're only going to get better at it if we, keep trying and making mistakes and being better.
Yeah. And I appreciate that she talked about some very practical strategies, but she also kind of highlighted some of the things that like I felt like I was recognizing, oh, maybe I haven't done this the best way. It's not that it was bad, but here are some ways that I could do it better in the future. And that to me was really helpful because, we're all trying our best to do the best for our students, but sometimes we might miss the mark a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many things that are on a teacher plate, right? And so sometimes it's easy and it's just where you are at, that it's surface level. And then when you recognize those things, you realize like, okay, where is there a place that maybe I can go more in depth? What's authentic and meaningful for my students,
Yeah. Because, above all, I do want all of my students to feel like they have a place in the music room. I want it to feel like it's authentic to them. Yeah. Everything that we want for our students. And I feel like Erin was just, a great voice to help us get there. So before we get to today's interview, we want to remind you that you can support Pass the Baton and get awesome perks.
Join the coffee club for as little as $2 a month and unlock discounts, free resources, planning parties, and more. Check out the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Erin Zaffini. Erin, thanks for being here today.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, I think Theresa and I have, Theresa's heard of your work and looked at some things. And then I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to be at Illinois Music Education Conference. And so I got to see you and it was really great session. So, it was nice to get to meet you in person and hear more about your work.
Oh, so great. Yeah, that was a great conference, by the way. That was fun. It was wonderful to meet you. And I really appreciate you coming and checking it out. And that really does encompass all of my work, that one workshop. So
it did, right? It just felt like it brought up the culturally responsive pedagogy and just equity, inclusion, and all these things. And it was just, and helping new teachers, right? So it was...
that's important. Very important. So the whole idea of access, equity, inclusion is really paramount to everything that I do. And then of course that second prong of just teacher induction and support is also part of it too, because those can be strategies that can actually help sustain you and stay in the profession, which is so important. Yeah.
Well, before we go too deep, let's pause a second. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us and everyone listening, what's your background? What are you up to these days in music education?
Sure. So I'm thrilled to meet all of you. My name is Dr. Erin Zaffini. I am the director of teacher education at Longy School of Music. We are a small school and music education program in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Cambridge, Boston area, near Harvard, actually. And I run all of our music education programs. And by that, I mean we have our Master of Music Education, the in-person that leads to licensure. We have our online Master of Music Education. We have our online Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies. We have all of that stuff going on, which is really fun and exciting. And then on top of that, I do a lot of workshopping, as Kathryn had mentioned before, some consulting work and working with schools and teacher support and just so many things that I have my fingers in, but really specializing in access, equity, and inclusion. And what does that mean for music education and why is it important? And how can we practically address those topics in realistic ways so we can move forward in a realistic, practical way and not burn out while doing it? Really important.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's all of the stuff we want to talk about today. So this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one thing when I was looking at some of your work, which hopefully you'll share later in the episode for others to look at, you talked about like, in your blog, kind of just how you get started and again, specifically with access, equity, and inclusion, and like how you think you're doing a good job and you're trying your best. And then when you kind of take a step back, you kind of look at your work and is there places that we sometimes as educators kind of get stuck or we don't really realize what we're doing. I guess in particular, like this idea of tokenism. Could you maybe explain what that is and why that's important in music education?
Sure. So tokenism really is just kind of this kind of symbolic gesture of really being more inclusive of other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a specific story of how I have tokenized in the past. And this was with my sixth grade students, and it was during Black History Month, so February. This was a few years back, and I had what I thought was a really wonderful, incredible, web quest project where we were doing jazz music, and I had all of my students researching and learning about these prominent jazz artists because it's Black History Month. They were going to put on this wax museum, this living wax museum. So it was fun. It was engaging. It checked off all of those boxes. I really thought that I was like teacher of the year because it was just a great project. It was really wonderful. I was so proud of it. But then in hindsight, I realized that it was really just symbolic because first it was during February and in no other time during the school year did I actually highlight prominent Black musicians anywhere. So I did it because it was February. I also did it very superficially, like we never really went into depth on anything. It was just who were they? What was one piece that they did? Just really superficial things. We never really learned in depth who this person was, what their background was, who influenced them, all of those things that are really important to the development of a musician. And so it was just performative. I had tokenized jazz music. I had tokenized those musicians, and I felt really, really crummy about it. I felt terrible. Hindsight 2020, at that moment, I didn't think that was what was happening, realized I had done that. And so it was just a superficial performative gesture of being more inclusive. And we do this all the time in music education. We don't mean to.
Right.
I've never once met a teacher that said, "Hey, who can I tokenize today?" That's not what I'm seeing. It's always rooted in a genuine good faith attempt of being more inclusive, specifically with repertoire. Maybe it's the choral setting, the instrumental setting, specifically with repertoire choices in general music. It's always trying to do something, but by accident tokenizing it instead because we don't do anything really well. We don't go into depth because we don't have time, right? We don't have time for all of that. And so we tokenize by accident all the time.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's really important to be aware of. So that way, maybe next time we can do something a little bit different.
Yeah. No, I think that's what it is, right? You become aware of it and then you try to do better, right? Right.
Yeah. I'm kind of scrolling through some of the things I've done in the past and wondering, I feel like I've fallen into that as well. And actually, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and saying that I have done this. It is not. So that's helpful to make me feel better. But okay, so what do I do then, right? If I had created this awesome project and it sounds like it really was a fun and engaging project, how could we think about that kind of learning in a way that's not going to be tokenizing?
Yeah. So what I would say is this is kind of like a double-sided thing, but I'm a huge fan of, I don't want people to misinterpret this. I love the fact that we have Black History Month and we have all of these months of celebration. And I think it's really wonderful because if we didn't have those months, I think that sometimes as teachers, we might not even go into those directions, right? So
Mhm.
it's helping us do that. On the same end of things, though, however, we only really do those types of things. A lot of, I don't want to say all of us, but many of us only do it during those times of month. So if you want to kind of do one thing, maybe next year that doesn't tokenize so much, is try to just be inclusive regularly throughout the curriculum, regardless of the month, regardless of what's happening that month, what's the theme of the month, like trying to do it regularly. I know that some teachers do musician of the month. I know that they do those things. Even that could have more depth for
Mhm.
sure, but at least it's regular inclusion of music that's not necessarily Western centric, Eurocentric.
Mhm.
So that's something that we can do. Another way to not tokenize is to really just to go in depth with the music.
Yeah.
We a lot of times we tokenize by sticking with what are they wearing? What does it sound like? And we don't really go into, well, what is the purpose of the music? For example, like we can tie music together with customs.
Mhm.
How do different cultures, mourn, and how does music play a role in that? Like that's going even more in depth.
Mhm.
Don't give things, a full 20 or 30 minutes of depth. We really give it 5 minutes of here's new music for some active listening. And now let's go on over back to Mozart for the rest of the year. you know and I'm not anti Western music at all.
Right.
That's how I was trained, all of that, but we need to cohabitate. In my opinion, we have to cohabitate more.
So the
Yeah.
depth, that's going to be thinking
Yeah.
about it year round and thinking about depth.
Yes, depth, customs, beliefs. Like if we helped our students look at different cultures with what we have in common in a deeper level, we'll realize that, a lot of cultures have the same beliefs. They show those beliefs differently in music. But they all use music to support those beliefs, or they use music to support these rites of passage and how does it play a role? Like we're so much more connected beyond
Mhm.
what it looks like or what it immediately just sounds like. But going into it a little bit more depth and not racing to the finish line. So as teachers, we think about, well, we don't have enough time to do all of this. And that's when I say, well, what are we going to vote off the island to do it well? Because
Mhm.
I almost would rather you do something well and take something off that's not so crucial than do something just for the sake of doing it and checking it off the list. So I make it sound maybe pretty easy, but it's not. It's building habits. It's
Yeah.
building. Mhm.
Well, and I could see you taking the engaging thing you talked about at the beginning, right? And then just being a lot more intentional with that. And where are there spaces for more in-depth conversations? How can you know, I guess sometimes we always think like, oh, I just have to throw this all away and come up with something new. And I don't know what and it's like, no, why would you do that? Right?
No, you
Like,
don't. You don't.
yeah,
But a big thing that I could have done, and this is something that I didn't mention before, but a huge thing that I really could have done and should have done was really just invite an authentic voice into the room.
yeah,
Like, I am not a trained jazz artist. I didn't grow up that way, and that's okay. As the teacher, you can't be the expert in everything. You can only
yeah.
be the expert in what you are, which most of us, it's like this little sliver, whatever that is. Okay.
Hmm.
So inviting people who know more than you into the room, or perhaps realizing and finding out that maybe even your students know more than you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
inviting them even further into the room, into the classroom as an expert and authority on their own culture. We don't do that enough.
Hmm.
And trying to find those authentic voices is really crucial to making it more real and less tokenized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our episode just now came out with Felipe, and he was talking a lot about that. About he didn't really have a lot of opportunities for his own heritage music, but he was speaking and saying like, if we don't have to do that in our music rooms, but if we don't, um,
is there going to be another place for him to share that music and have that music? And so, just, yeah, like you said, having students bring in their own information about their own families and their own music and it kind of makes me think, sorry, I'm thinking back to Zoom and thinking back to COVID years. Like sometimes that was pretty easy on Zoom and COVID because I'd have a child in the background. They're like, can I show you my Korean drum? I know how to, and I'm like, yes, bring it over, but yeah, like just, they want to share and they want, that's what a great way to have kids.
Yes, they want to share. They're proud. They're proud of what they know, what they have to offer. And a lot of students, we would never know unless we just simply asked them, invited them. Like, how many times do we actually ask our students, tell me everything you know about this? Because I don't know about it. Tell me everything that you know. Really, your grandfather was a professional mariachi musician.
Right.
Is he still around? Oh my gosh, he is. Is he local? Oh, cool. He's not local, but we'll get him on Zoom. Okay. Like, how would we know unless we just spent some time really digging and asking? And once we view our students as assets, as opposed to these kind of empty vessels where it's our job to fill them with everything that we know, and we have to be the expert in everything. Once we realize that they come with a full bucket already, they do. And so bringing that in, I mean, that's the best form of fighting against tokenism completely, because it's authentic to them. It's real. They're the experts, and you're centering voices from the community that you're trying to embrace in the classroom. I mean, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And as a result, it improves engagement and classroom management because they're fully in. They're fully on board. Why wouldn't they? You see them and they see themselves. So it's this huge win-win when it comes to that type of stuff.
Yeah. I remember that idea of being the expert was one of the things I struggled with the most as a new teacher, right? Because I felt like I just did my 4 years of college. I have to know it all, right? And I think that was something that it took me a while to be okay with admitting that I didn't know something. How do you help teachers with this? I can't be the only one.
Yes, you're not. This happens all the time. So when I'm working with teachers, regardless of where they are in their development, so whether they're new or not, even people who've been teaching for 20 years, there's this genuine fear of, well, two things. One, some teachers feel like they don't have the right to teach about certain things because that's not how they grew up. And to which I say, well, if you don't know enough about it, don't do it yet, but just make sure that you're ready when that time comes. Like, then you would have the right. If you do all of the things or some things to make it less tokenizing, then go for it. And then the other fear is that FOMO, right? Fear of messing up, And I always say to teachers, you know what? You're going to mess up. You will mess it up. One teacher I was working with had said I'm overgeneralizing here, but essentially what he was saying was, all of you Spanish speaking people, you all do these things in music. And I cringed a little bit in my seat, and then I saw him cringe a little bit. I was like, okay, at the end of class, like, so I saw you cringe there. What was that? What was that all about? He's like, I realized that I literally overgeneralized an entire, like, multiple cultures into one culture just because all of the Spanish speaking students, and really there's so many different cultures within the Spanish speaking culture, and that's just a piece of it. It's like there's so much more to it. And so yeah, you're gonna mess up. I still mess up. We all are still messing up. And what I say to teachers is that we're all on a journey, and we have to support each other on the journey. I think that social media, as beautiful as it is, has also become a place for keyboard warriors sometimes, right? And when I go onto communities and people are going on and saying, okay, I'm posting anonymously because I don't want people to think bad about me, but I'm looking for a song that features this, and then I see people saying, how do you not know this? And you haven't thought about this. But really, I don't think of a teacher asking a question like that as being ill-intended at all. I think it's a real question, and we should be like, I love that you're asking this question. Have you considered this instead? Or I want to program this song, and someone says that's on the list. You can't program it. It's racist. Well,
Mhm.
they didn't know that. That's why they're asking. So just being supportive as much as possible, and then offering solutions is also really important. But we're all on the journey.
Yeah, for sure. I think I remember too, even at the mentoring session that we were talking about earlier that I went to, just the idea of just like remembering you've got teachers down the street at the other school or in another district or whatever. I've got Teresa, right? Like there's you don't have to do it on your own, and probably shouldn't, right? Like there's just so many ideas and other things you can get from other people. Why sit and struggle on your own?
Exactly. And especially now in the post-COVID time, I mean, we're still in COVID, right? But in post-COVID, where d during the 1.5, 2 years of just ramping up online resources, online databases, online everything, a
Mhm.
lot of those things are still around. And
Mhm.
so communities that were, spread out because of COVID, like those communities are still there. And I'm a huge fan of crowdsourcing and digging and a friend of a friend of a friend's uncle or whatever, all of that. Like we are not so disconnected that we can't ask those questions and somebody will have an answer. And if they don't, they'll know somebody who knows somebody who might have an answer for you.
Mhm.
So reaching out, I think is really, really important. I've always, worked with teachers that will do like a weekly study group together of like, what are you working on this week?
Yeah.
And how can we all crowdsource and offer up recommendations on helping what to do and how to level it up a little bit. Like that constant connection is really important, and I'm coming at it from the perspective of a K-8 general music, band, vocal, handbells, guitar, everything specialist for one person for one school, where I really was kind of on an island for
Yeah.
years.
Mhm.
And now that doesn't have to be the case. There's so many opportunities out there if you take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree that we can't do this work alone, and
No?
having people is going to be so valuable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm like, where are we? Part of me is like, I mean, is there something that we haven't talked about yet that you want to share? We've kind of been all over, but it's been good all over.
Yeah.
What I say to teachers, and I say this to myself all the time too. So I always say I'm pretty much self-taught. Like everything I do has been habits that have been self-taught, but are rooted in research and just things that I wasn't trained to do. And
Mhm.
so when I give workshops to teachers, for example, or I'm working with beginning teachers, or even my own graduate students, the idea of access, equity, and inclusion, and even tokenism, those are huge barrels of things to lift and carry.
Mhm.
Okay, so it could actually be kind of overwhelming, right? And I feel like, for better or worse, we are, instead of treating it like a marathon, our profession is kind of treating it like a sprint. Okay, which I've always said is kind of the surefire way of burning out.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do everything all the time today after a workshop day, and it's all or nothing, then it's going to wind up being nothing. And so a recommendation that I would have is to just do progress over perfection. Pick one thing to focus on. If you're talking about tokenism specifically, pick one piece of music that you are either already doing or that you want to do, and learn a little bit more about it. Consult some experts. You'll find a whole bunch online.
Mhm.
There's websites too. There's Smithsonian Folkways, for example. There's the Council for Ethnomusicology. The International Society for Music Education has a huge amount of resources, like lots of really wonderful resources out there that you can consult, even those communities. But pick one piece of music and go in a little bit more depth about it, so that way you are ready to go more in depth with your students.
Mhm.
If you're planning on presenting it, make sure that you present it authentically. And what can you do to make it more authentic, and just do a little bit more. And then the next week, do a little bit more. So if you really have to pace yourself, because if you don't, it's just going to be overwhelming. And that's how we build those good habits. right? That's
Mhm.
how it's not a trend. That's how we build these good habits. If we just practice not tokenizing, eventually it's just going to become part of our prep work and what do we do? And
Mhm.
it'll feel weird to pick a piece and not do research on it. It'll feel weird to go into, for me, it felt weird to introduce a unit on hip hop and then not talk to my students who actually listen to hip hop all the time.
Mhm.
It felt off. And so I made space for it, but that took years of like practicing it. So it's, to do anything well, it takes practice, and that's totally okay. And take as long as you need because it'll take time. It'll take time.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because I'm thinking back to, the middle school band director version of me.
Yeah.
And what I heard you say was one piece. For right now, I'm thinking about one piece and how I can go deeper. And I can do that. Like that's
Yeah.
totally manageable. And then making sure that it's not throughout the school year just one piece, right? That
Yes.
it's one piece right now, and then making sure the next concert cycle there's another piece or two. And but it's not, you're not telling me that I need to go home and reprogram everything I've planned for the rest of the school year, and just because I can't I can't do that, right? But I can totally go more in depth with a piece of music that's going to help my students really just understand it more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And whatever that means for you in your context. So when I was teaching general music full time, I would add in a new folk dance every 6 weeks or so. I would learn a new folk dance. I would do a deep dive. I would go to folk dance training. One time I went to Italy for fun, and I hit up all of the arts festivals, and now I teach the Tarantella super well because I was schooled in it for like 6 years straight. But like, add something into the mix in a time frame that works for whatever your context is. If you're being run by concert season, try to have a piece for concert season. If you're being run by units, try to add something, for units. If you're being run by musical skills and content, right? Like the idea of musical form and beat and dynamics and tempo. Well, all of those ideas are present in other music.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to necessarily highlight all of the same stuff. We can say, and how does that compare to the tempo in this piece? And by the way, this piece is from Australia, and this is what we learned about here, and it's used for this, but what's the purpose of dynamics for this piece? Like going into deep depth is really important, and doing it in a way that is authentic to what you're currently doing is really crucial. Because if
Mhm.
you're trying to reinvent who you are, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I know a lot of people will say to us often is, well, I don't have time. I don't have, but the concert or, whatever that thing is. But I'm still hearing you say that that's not an issue.
No, I think the issue is that, well, what I say is it does take time to not tokenize. So, but it doesn't have to take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I'm kind of saying, is that to do anything different, you will have to learn how to do it a little bit, but you don't have to do it all. So if you're talking about concert season and you want to prep for concert season, a really good way to not tokenize something is to really ask your students, what are your cultures? And is there any music that you would like to represent this for the winter concert, whatever that is? And we'll start from that. And then we'll work that piece in. And then we'll have the regularly scheduled things that you're comfortable with, that you're confident in, but add that piece in or substitute something in. Go in depth just a little bit with something, and then do it again for the next round. Okay. Do it again for the next round. Maybe earmark 15 minutes to go into depth into something that you wouldn't have done before. Maybe that's the time. So it's sometimes it's what you do, and sometimes it's how you do it that doesn't tokenize as well. So there's different ways of going about it. But if you're trying to lift all of it at once,
Yeah.
right, you won't have time. You won't.
Yeah.
There's just no way. But just try to do it in a meaningful way that makes sense to the process of what you've got going already. That's really important. It's so different for every teacher. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to feel. It's difficult to say everyone must do this when I don't know anyone's context of who's
Yeah.
listening. But what I can say is that we've always found a way. We've always
Yeah.
found a way to tokenize less.
Well, and we say the same thing about empowering all music students and like the music qualities. Like, yeah, you're gonna get very burnout if you're just trying to every day pack all these things in. It's like, no, that's just not how that works. But
Yes.
right, but then eventually, like I hear you saying, it kind of is just embedded in your teaching. It's embedded in what you do, but you don't get there overnight. It's not going to happen that way. So,
No, it's not. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was one school that I had worked with in the past that for a whole year, all we worked on was not tokenizing, like the entire year. And even then, it was like everyone was so much further along, and we probably could have spent a whole nother year on it. Like
mhm.
that's the pace that I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
it's marathon. It's not a sprint. And if that's all that they do moving forward, I think that's a great, worthwhile thing. It's
Mhm.
relevant and it's realistic, and it's what's important to them and their students. So it's okay that it takes whatever it takes.
Mhm.
Okay, so I have a question about like repertoire type stuff and this idea because I'm thinking back to some of the different teaching situations I've been in, and there's often a lot of different cultures represented in my room, which is awesome. But I don't necessarily know if there's middle school band repertoire that's going to work. How do I handle that kind of situation?
Well, what I would say is that I would expect that there wouldn't be middle school repertoire for every single culture that you have in your room. Most cultures don't define music literacy as, as written notation. They
Right.
just don't do it, right? And so what I would advocate for, which is really scary if you're someone who's classically trained like me, but you're so beholden to notation, is to actually embrace the oral tradition and try to find a spot for that in your ensemble, playing, performing, all of it, whether it's improvisation, whether it's collaboration, whether it's, we have circle singing, we have circle drumming. Can there be circle playing in the
Okay.
instrument ensemble? Can there be call and response? Like, what are those musical traditions that are present in those cultures that are not notation bound? Because, middle school band, I know because I'm also a person who's taught middle school band and jazz band and all of that. I know that it really is all about the concert, but how cool would it be is if you had a part of the concert that actually showed the creative aspect of non-notation based customs, and what could that look like in that setting? How cool would it be if they could have a conversation with the audience? All of that, like very collaborative, very interactive. That's really embracing cultures in a whole new way, not typical for middle school band or any band,
Yeah.
right? But that really causes us to stretch a little bit and make space for how other communities and how other cultures do music,
Mhm.
because that
Yeah.
really is not the way that most of the world does it, right? It's how we
Yeah.
do it, but that's not the way that other cultures do.
That makes so much sense because so now I'm not looking for repertoire, but I'm just thinking about how do we do music
Yes,
and opening
yes,
those doors for the students. And I keep saying middle school band, but I feel like,
all of it.
orchestra, high school band, like all of those kind of fit in where we do. A lot of times we think about, okay, what's our repertoire? And that's kind of our curriculum, if not, a better word for the year.
Mhm.
But I don't have to do just that.
No, think about it as music making. Just how do they make
Mhm.
music, and for
Yeah.
what purpose? Like, it's such a celebratory event in other cultures, and more than half of them don't read notation. But are
Right.
they not musicians?
Right.
Right? That's not true,
Absolutely.
right? We know that that's not true.
Absolutely.
And so embracing how do other cultures make music, and how can we do that here in our context? And
Mhm.
also, it's teaching our students that mistakes are totally okay. Trying new things you're building social and emotional skills along the way. It's like this byproduct, this really beautiful byproduct of students who love notation and they're not used to branching off from that. It's a good stepping stone for that, because that, music is not just notes on the page. It is so much more. It's,
Yeah.
it's really about community.
And I think too, what I hear you say, like, so I'm kind of going with Teresa about if I feel stuck in this place, is invite an authentic voice to come in and work with your group, and you will learn a lot from that experience as well. So
Yes, yes. Let me give you an example. So this actually started in one of the Facebook communities. So a teacher had posted in the Facebook community, I think a few months ago, one of the many of them, and said, "I'm having a whole bunch of students from China come over. They're coming over for a year. It's like I don't remember what we call it, but it was a year-long thing. They're staying with host families, all of this. They're coming over and they're going to be here with you for a year." And this teacher, again, rooted in really good efforts, came onto the community and said, "Can everyone give me the repertoire for this country? Like, what vocal repertoire do you have?" And this is when I just kind of sit back and I'm like, before I say anything, I just want to see what other people are saying. And everyone's like, "Have you considered this? And have you considered this?" And this is all repertoire that was written in the spirit of the culture, but by people who are not culture bearers, right? So it would have been tokenizing, in my opinion. And then finally I said, "Have you considered maybe asking your students what songs come when they get here?" So not having a plan ahead of time, but when they get here, asking them what music does have value for them, what is part of their culture. And then the fear of that, I met with her after, and the fear of the teacher saying, "Well, I need to have the piece like ready in my hand and copy." What I'm saying is, I think that you might not need a piece. I think that you can do everything orally. Just see how it goes. And that was a huge stretch as far as being okay with not knowing, right? Like what was going to happen. And what wound up happening was the children who didn't read music at that time, at least the way that we read music, they wound up singing, and it was call and response, and then it was echoing, and it was all orally learned and transmitted, like in their culture. And they performed it for their concert. It was so amazing. And not a single note was written. It was wonderful, and it was really authentic. And so if we let go of the reins a little bit, we can really invite our students in more. Even if we don't have a plan, even if we're so tethered to notation and having to have that plan, it's really okay to let go sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's such a good reminder. I'm just picturing how special that must be for the students who had the opportunity to teach their peers.
Yes, yes. Well, they didn't know a lot of English. That was another concern of this teacher, and she was right. When they came, they really had very little English, and I was like, "Well, how cool would it be if the way that they could actually contribute is to teach a song?" And they did. It was wonderful. It was just so great. I got to see a little video of it. It was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. And after that, she said that those students, they still didn't speak really wonderful English, but they were participating, they were engaged, they felt welcomed for who they were.
Yeah.
How cool is that? That was cool.
Oh,
very cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if someone listening is they're excited about this idea, they want to make some changes, but they want to do something tomorrow. They do want tomorrow to be their first step. What would you recommend?
So I feel like we used to do this, but we don't do it really well as a profession. I would say if you have 5 minutes, create an opportunity in your lesson for tomorrow where students, as exit tickets or think, pair, share, or however they want to give the feedback, it's really their choice, where they can say, "This is what I'm listening to at home. This is the stuff that my parents are listening to. This is the music that's part of my culture that I'm proud of. Here are some songs." And just go on a digging mission. Just start going on a digging mission. And if it's general music, do it for the next 4 weeks. Do it the last 5 minutes of class for the next 4 weeks. If it's for instrumental or vocal or any other ensemble-based thing, build it into the lesson plan and just learn more about the assets and the representation that are currently in your community. It's really important because every community has culture. There's a thing where a lot of white people feel like they have no culture because they're white. But really, every community does have culture, right? You don't have to be a person of color. Everyone has culture. So even if you are teaching in a predominantly white community, you can and still should do this. But go and figure out what is actually happening at home. What do students know about music, and how do they know it? We call that funds of knowledge. How do they know what they know? And just finding that out, because you'll be surprised that when you ask the question and not just ask it and then let them leave, but listen with purpose and engagement and digging more, well, tell me what you mean by that. Or you'll find that there is so much wealth of experience in your community. If you don't have community organizations, you'll probably have a lot in your community that you don't even know about. And so try to do that first tomorrow and see what you come up with. You'll be surprised.
That's perfect. That's exactly something someone could do tomorrow. I love it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I guess before we let you go, like, how can people connect with you and find out more about your work?
Oh yeah. So there's a whole bunch of ways to connect with me. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Z _ Longy. I'm on Facebook. You can Facebook me. You can go to my website, which is erinzaffini.com. And that's where I have all those blog posts are up there. I'll put free resources up there as well. You can also reach me at Longy. That is my full-time job. ezaffini@longy.edu. And then, of course, if folks are interested in any of we have free workshops, we have paid workshops, we have free workshops, we have graduate programs, we have anything that you possibly could want. We have that there. You can reach me there as well, too. So lots of ways. And I encourage you to connect with me. Don't be a stranger, because I like to hear all about the wonderful work that everyone's doing already, because I'm sure you are.
We'll make sure we put all those links into the show notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thank you for entertaining all of our questions and just making it feel not scary, and also just doable, right? That we can make these changes in our classrooms.
Oh, you're welcome. It is doable. Good luck to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us. If you have found value in our conversation, please hit that like button, subscribe to our podcast, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us grow our community of passionate music educators.